hereby declare this meeting of the Howell Township Planning Board to be open. Adequate notice having been given pursuant to the New Jersey Open Public Meeting Act in the following manner. First, on March 31st, 2023, a copy of said notice was mailed to the Asbury Park Press and the Star-Ledger. Second, on March 31st, 2023, a copy of said notice was hand-delivered to the clerk of the Township of Howell. Third, on March 31st, 2023, said notice was posted in the office of the Planning Board and on the bulletin board in the Howell Township Municipal Building, 4567 Route 9, Howell Township, New Jersey. In accordance with the Fire Prevention Code and your safety, please be advised that this facility is designed with 2 emergency exits, which are on your right at the front and rear of the meeting room. Furthermore, smoking is not permitted in the municipal building. Please take note that this meeting is being videotaped for possible future broadcast on Howell Township TV 77.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Cristiano?
Present.
Mr. Greenfield?
Here.
Mr. Husser?
Here.
Mr. Leggio?
Here.
Mr. Seaman?
Here.
Mr. Tannenhouse? I have not heard from him. Councilman Gazier?
Here.
Mr. Mercer?
Here.
Ms. Pike is going to be late, and Chairman Bavai.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. All right, can we please rise for the pledge of the flag and then a moment of silence for the troops serving here and abroad.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We'll start with some approval of minutes. Regular meeting, June 1st, 2023. Eligible voters, Greenfield, Leggio, Seaman, Gazer, Mercer, and myself. Do you have a motion?
Motion to accept.
Second.
Mr. Greenfield?
Yes.
Mr. Leggio?
Yes.
Mr. Seaman?
Yes.
Councilman Gazier?
Yes.
Mr. Mercer?
Yes.
And Chairman Bavai.
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Okay. Regular meeting, June 15th, 2023. Eligible voters, Greenfield, Hooser, Leggio, Seaman, Mercer, and myself. Could I have a motion? Motion. Second.
Mr. Greenfield?
Yes.
Mr. Husser?
Yes.
Mr. Leggio?
Yes.
Mr. Seaman?
Yes.
Mr. Mercer?
Yes.
And Chairman Bavai.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay. Regular meeting, July 20th, 2023. Eligible voters, Husser, Leggio, Seaman, Mercer, and myself. Could I have a motion?
Make a motion.
Second.
Mr. Husser?
Yes.
Mr. Leggio?
Yes.
Mr. Seaman?
Yes.
Mr. Mercer?
Yes.
And Chairman Bavai.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay. And last, August 3rd, 2023. Eligible voters, Cristiano, Greenfield, and Gazer. Could I have a motion, please?
I'll make a motion. Second.
Mr. Cristiano?
Yes.
Mr. Greenfield?
Yes.
And Councilman Gazier.
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Do we have any vouchers?
I have no vouchers.
Any correspondence?
I do have correspondence. I have an email from Michael Herbert. He is the attorney for Wadsworth Development, which should have been on tonight's agenda. He said his engineer is all backed up and is still working on the plans. He asked if we could please go to October the 19th, 2023.
So, Mr. Chairman, that is, that's part of a settlement agreement that the town has. I mean, it's in the applicant's hands, so I would recommend, that they be provided the amount of time to finish the plans.
Okay.
So, Eileen, it's the 19th, you said?
October 19th, yes.
So let me just make the announcement. Okay, the application of Wadsworth Development LLC, Ramtown Estates, that's going to be the Whispering Woods hearing, is going to be carried to the board's October 19, 2023 meeting. It's a live meeting beginning at 7 o'clock here in the main meeting room in Town Hall. There'll be no further notice to property owners.
Thank you. I also have a letter from Robert Simon. He's the attorney for AAVRHW Property, and they were carried to tonight for scheduling purposes only. He requests that this evening's public hearing be carried to October 5th meeting of the board, and that a public announcement of that hearing date be made at tonight's meeting. He also granted the board an extension of time to hear this through October 31st, 2023.
You said the 5th, Eileen?
October 5th.
Okay. So the application of AAVRHW Property LLC, application SP 1105, will be carried to the board's October 5th, 2023 meeting. That's a live meeting beginning 7 o'clock here in the main meeting room in Town Hall. There'll be no further notice to property owners. All documents are available for review and inspection in the office of the Planning Department during normal business hours.
And that's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Any resolutions?
No resolutions.
All right. All right, so first up, submission waivers. Case number SP 1046A, Bank of America, amended minor site plan.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Tom Letizia, attorney, representing Bank of America, N.A.
Counsel, just to let you know, what we normally do is we turn it over to the board's engineer to go over the request for submission waivers, and she'll give us her recommendations, and then you can respond, if you feel necessary.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give this board is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay, go ahead.
So, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, we had issued a July 19th, 2023 review letter. The submission waivers are specifically outlined in items 3, in item 3, and it goes several pages. I think it's important to note that the scope of this application is strictly limited to lighting. And so given that, and it's an amended application, I take no exception to the granting of these waivers for the purposes of deeming the application complete.
Okay.
Counsel,
I
anything?
have no response.
I would not expect so.
We appreciate your support of the waivers. Thank you.
All righty.
Okay, so we just need a vote, Mr. Chairman.
Can I get a motion?
I'll make a motion for approval.
Second.
Mr. Cristiano?
Yes.
Mr. Greenfield?
Yes.
Mr. Husser?
Yes.
Mr. Leggio?
Yes.
Mr. Seaman?
Yes.
Councilman Gager?
Yes.
Mr. Mercer?
Yes.
And Chairman Bavai.
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you.
When will we be on for your...
I'll have to call you.
That's a lot of stuff. All right.
Thank you.
Very good, thank you. Have a good evening.
Have a good night. Next up, case number SP 1115, JABE Howell LLC, preliminary and final major site plan.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Michael Butler from the law firm of Eckert Siemens on behalf of the applicant, JAB Howell LLC.
Okay, same
All right.
thing as before.
Same thing, yep.
Okay, do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give this board is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay, go ahead.
So, Mr. Chairman, similarly, we have a July 14th, 2023 review letter. The submission waivers are specifically outlined in item 3. Because this is a major site plan, there are a few items I think that we should have, specifically 10 and 11, Monmouth County Planning Board application, Freehold Soil Conservation District application. Item 16, a traffic report, even if it's in a narrative form. And item 60, the all overland and underground drainage conveyances within 2,000 feet of the site.
Okay,
And I have no objection with those. Actually, the Monmouth County Planning Board application and the Freehold Soil Conservation District application have already been submitted, so I can submit copies of those to the board.
okay, great.
No, and there's no issue with, I think it was 16 and 60 were the other two. We'll
Correct.
include that information.
Okay, great. With that, I'll take a motion.
I'll make motion for approval. I'll second.
Mr. Cristiano?
Yes.
Mr. Greenfield?
Yes.
Mr. Husser?
Yes.
Mr. Leggio?
Yes.
Mr. Seaman?
Yes.
Councilman Gager?
Yes.
Mr. Mercer?
Yes.
And Chairman Bavai.
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right, thank you.
Have a good evening. All right. Next up, case number SD 3010, Samuel Neger, minor subdivision with ancillary variance relief.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board, professional staff. Peter Klauser with the firm Howell Pape on behalf of the applicant.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give this board is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, we have an August 18th, 2023 review letter. The submission waivers are specifically outlined in item 3. I take no exception to the granting of these. It's a minor subdivision application for the purposes of deeming the application complete. Understanding, though, that descriptions, the first item, item 17, would have to be provided as a result of any action of approval, but for the purposes of deeming this application complete, I take no exception to waiving it at this time.
Okay.
Understood.
Yep.
Do we have a second?
Second.
I'm sorry, who was that?
That was me.
Oh, thank you, Nick. I can't see you. Mr. Cristiano?
Yes.
Mr. Greenfield?
Yes.
Mr. Husser?
Yes.
Mr. Leggio?
Yes.
Mr. Seaman?
Yes.
Councilman Gager?
Yes.
Mr. Mercer?
Yes.
And Chairman Bavai.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you very much.
Have a
Have a
good
good
evening.
evening.
Thank you.
Okay. First application in front of us is case number SD 3007, Abbott Brothers LLC, minor subdivision with ancillary variance relief.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Todd Cohen. I am now of counsel to the law firm of John J. Jackson in Howell Township, and I am the attorney for the applicant, Abbott Brothers LLC. If it's okay with the chair, I have a brief introduction. I have two witnesses, an engineer and planner, who will both be testifying. We also have an exhibit we will need marked by our engineer. Okay. This is an application for a 3-lot minor subdivision with variances on property located at 275 Fairfield Road, not far from the intersection of 524. Parcel is approximately 4.9 acres in size and is surrounded by other developed subdivisions that average about 1 acre in size. Today, the property contains a single-family dwelling, a second structure, which is a 1-story detached garage with an apartment. It also has some improvements, a pool, some sheds, and a driveway access. The approval history of the property is in 2008. The previous owner who sold the property to my client applied for a 2-lot minor subdivision. Some reason that never got, it did have a submission waiver hearing, but it never got past that stage of the application. In 2010, the same applicant and owner received an interpretation from the Zoning Board of Adjustment, finding that the existing garage apartment was a valid pre-existing non-conforming use and could be rented out without the need for a use variance. That they found out that apartment had existed for at least 20 years at that time. Both resolutions showing the submission waivers and the interpretation are part of the record. They're found in items A9 and A10 on the exhibit list. The applicant now proposes to keep the single-family dwelling and pool on the middle lot, eliminate the garage apartment and the pre-existing non-conforming use, and end up with 3 lots, each of which are 1.6 acres in size, which would be the largest lots in the area. We have received review letters, the latest review letter from your professionals, CMEs, which is dated 5/8/23, and the Avakian report, which is dated 3/23, also of this year, and our professionals will address those as we go along. With that being said, my first witness is John Plaskanka, professional engineer from Concept Engineering. I think we need to have him sworn in order to proceed.
Okay. Mr. Plaskanka, do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to provide this board is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please state and spell your name for the record.
John Plaskanka, Ploskonka, professional engineer, Manalapan, New Jersey.
Are you only being qualified as a professional engineer tonight, or a professional engineer and planner?
Just as a professional engineer,
Okay. Good. Mr. Cohen, if you could qualify Mr. Pliskanka?
Yes. John, would you please put your qualifications on the record, both professionally and educational, for your engineering testimony?
I've been the owner and president of Concept Engineering in Manalapan. The company's been in business for 50 years. I've appeared before boards in Howell, Manalapan, Freehold, Clucks Neck, Jackson, Saraville. Over the years, several thousand meetings I've attended, including this board.
We'll accept your credentials.
Thank
Thank
you,
you,
Mr.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, we have an exhibit, it's listed on our exhibit as A12. It was only recently submitted. I'm thinking we should mark it and...
Well, let
It
me
is-
just see if we have it.
The key map with the surrounding properties,
Yeah.
Correct.
that's on there as A12.
Okay, so then we wouldn't have to mark it, I guess.
No.
It's on the board right now.
Okay. If you could just mark it as A12 then, on the board.
Thank you very much. John, would you briefly describe the subdivision application before the board this evening?
Yeah, we're seeking, as you pointed out,
I can't hear you. Can you pull that mic closer to you?
sure,
Thank you.
we're seeking 3 building lots on this approximate 5.0 property. It's about 5 acres, it's 4.9, with about 500 foot of frontage. We have a house and the garage apartment in the center of the property. As you can see on the plans in front of you, the existing house is there, and the garage apartment's off to the left. So those are 2 permitted uses on the property for 2 residential uses, and we want to eliminate that non-conforming garage apartment, create a building lot to the left, create a building lot to the right, so it would be 2 new houses. The existing house would be a garage added in front, so you'd have 3 houses that are all 1.6 acres, or about 70,000 square feet each.
Can you tell the board what zone you're in?
We're in the ARE Zone 2.
And
So we're in
what's the minimum area for a lot in the ARE2 zone?
It's a 2-acre requirement for the property. It's 80,
So you're requesting that this board entertain a subdivision that would create 3 undersized lots in the zone where you have a conforming lot right now, right?
that's correct.
And hold on, Todd, not for nothing. You're requesting to keep the existing home, whereas if the home were to be demolished, you could divide this lot into 2 conforming lots, correct?
I don't believe so. I think you have to
How
have...
so?
I don't believe you'll have 2 conforming lots. I think you'll have 1 lot that's conforming and 1 lot that will need variance.
If you eliminate the house on a 5-acre piece of property in a 2-acre zone, you can't create 2 conforming lots?
If you took out the house...
That's what I asked.
That's pre-existing...
That's what I
you're
asked.
correct.
So you're asking this board to entertain a subdivision to create 3 non-conforming lots where 1 conforming lot exists today? Correct?
That's correct.
Correct.
Great, thanks.
Please continue, John.
Sure. Again, the lot sizes are 70,000 square feet each. We are eliminating the garage apartment, and we're keeping an existing home, which I think is important to maintain that home. Our planner will speak to maintaining the existing house, and then we're creating 2 additional lots that are far bigger than anything around us. If you go back to the
But undersized, correct?
Well, let's just let them finish their presentation.
be very
Yeah.
clear in what we're dealing with here.
Yeah, but there's no question we're asking for a lot size variance in each lot. It's supposed to be 2 acres at 1.61, 1.62, 1.65. We feel we have justification for it. We'd just like to-
Todd, you just need to get a little closer to the mic.
On the record.
Agreed.
Thank you.
So as Jen pointed out, it's a 2-acre minimum. Lot 1 is 1.6, Lot 2 is 1.65, Lot 3 is 1.6. The minimum frontage is 200 feet, and we have 144, 170 and 172 respectively. And the minimum lot width, of course, follows the normal lot frontage, which is the same, 144, 170, 172. And then the front detention basin in the right front corner of the property, because in that location is a variance also. So there are bulk variances that we're seeking, which are, again, to be discussed more intelligently by our professional planner. But you should point out, I must point out that the front yard setback is 50 feet in the zone, yet we're twice that size with 115, 118, and 122 with the proposed houses and existing house, over double the front setback requirement, and the lot depth is 200 feet. We have over 400 feet, so our lot depth is over double the requirement of the 2-acre zone. And the rear yard setback is 50 feet required, and we have 270, 257, and 275, 5 times that required by the zone. So there are other conditions. We meet the height, we meet the lot coverage.
Wait a minute. Lot 2, you do not meet the lot coverage.
Lot coverage, we will meet that coverage based on a revised drawing, subject to, we will meet that requirement. It's only a,
I mean, honestly, John, like, my letter's dated March.
yeah,
It's September. That lot coverage variance has been called out since March. If you had something to submit, why haven't you submitted it up till now?
we haven't submitted plans. We carried a couple of meetings.
I understand
but
that.
We've made the changes, but we didn't submit to give you, to have the appropriate public hearing and move forward.
I mean, not for nothing, like, I can't even comment to the board that they are gonna comply, because in all these months, we haven't seen revised plans, and what I have is 15.65, which is over the permitted acreage on an undersized lot.
It's
But
.6.
I mean, look, well, you said you have something. Is there an exhibit that you have tonight?
It's 15.65. It's less than 1%. We have a pool, we have a patio.
No, but you were saying that you have a revised plan that you haven't submitted yet. I was just wondering if there was an exhibit that you intended to introduce tonight
I
that
do not
depicted...
have that exhibit, no,
Okay,
sir.
all right, thank you.
As Todd pointed out, the property was subject to zoning board, and there was a decision that the apartment can remain and the house can remain based on that
So
decision.
just on that, you said that you applied to the zoning board for an interpretation, not for a certification of pre-existing nonconformity? Because Section 68 of the MLUL would require a certification of nonconformity, which is a noticed public hearing. It's not an interpretation, really, of a zoning ordinance.
There's a resolution that was adopted that we
Yes.
have part of the file.
Yeah, as I stated before, the resolution is part of the record.
Well, I'm asking what the resolution, if you could just, for this record, because we have to make our own record, what was it that the zoning board gave you? I want to make sure you used the word interpretation, which is 70B. I just want to make sure there was never a decision under Section 68.
Resolution does not specify those sections. It states that,
All right, well, if it's not clear, it's not clear. I was just wondering. That's all right.
it says that the applicant sought interpretation of
All right. No, really, I mean, it's, like I said, it should be a noticed hearing under Section 68, but we'll take the resolution as it exists.
they appealed to the zoning officer's determination that a use variance approval is required. Right, but they got an interpretation.
All right. But when was that? 2010? Okay. All right, you can go on.
There's a report from the engineer, and we looked at that report, and we basically agree with what she's asked us to do. I can go through it point by point, or just indicate that we basically agree. We did have a field visit with Shari Spiro to locate the trees to be saved, and we're not going to have any sheds to remain. We'll put in curb, sidewalk, and street trees as per the requirement of the engineer. We'll get letters from the tax assessor, provide meets and bounds description for the new township.
John, I don't need you to go through the technical. Let's start like this. If this were to be approved, is it going to be filed by deed or plat?
By plat.
I think Todd spoke to the subdivision history. What about timing associated with the removal of these improvements? If it was
No improvement.
Well, no, I don't know that Todd completely spoke to the subdivision history. Let's just go back to that. I mean, he kind of explained when his client took control of the property, but I don't think there was any discussion that would allow us to come to the conclusion it's not a creeping major. So, I mean, do you have a history, Todd, of the subdivisions?
My client only bought the property in 2021.
It doesn't matter when your client bought the property. There's a history that anybody could find if they wanted to research and go to the clerk's office and read the title history.
What's your question?
We want to make sure that it's not a creeping major, that it's a minor. So in order to do that, we have to understand when this lot was created.
Everything I could tell from reading the resolutions and the history,
Todd,
the property was previously
Todd.
owned.
Can't hear you.
The property was prior to the applicant who made applied for the resolution in 2008, interpretation 2010. It was owned by some type of an outfit that was related to a church. As far as I know, it's the original lot. I have not found anything that indicates it was subdivided.
It was lot 21 back then, that's still lot 21.
All right, well, that's your representation, and that's your representation. Let's move on.
There's items to be removed from this site. When would they be removed as it would relate to the filing of a map?
Prior to.
Whether or not there's architectural drawings, the town has a look-alike ordinance, and when you look at these footprints, particularly on 1 and 3, they're identical.
They would meet the look-alike ordinance and be consistent with the neighborhood.
And you kind of glossed over the stormwater. I think it's an important component. This is a major development under the stormwater regs, even though it's a minor subdivision. We have very specific comments because they're creating an infiltration basin. It'll be located on one of the lots, but the stormwater regulations do not allow a homeowner to take that responsibility on. It would have to be through a homeowners association. So can you first speak to that?
The site with the plans would have a HOA association with this application. and
For 3 lots?
That's what the DEP
You have to
requires.
do-
I understand that, but I'm just saying, like, the reality, are you legitimately presenting to this board that a 3-lot subdivision is gonna create a legitimate HOA? Or is this basin gonna ultimately get pushed back on the taxpayers?
Well, the intent is to have a validly functioning HOA. So the declaration, if you don't want to
I
buy
get
it.
it.
Let me,
get it.
hold on, everybody, let me just, that's what the DEP requires. The town is really not at liberty to say we don't agree with how the DEP would allow this to proceed. Everybody understands that a lot of times what you get is the homeowners appearing at council meetings, pleading for the council to take over maintenance. But I don't view that as being part of the positive and negative criteria associated with the creation of the lots. That's just a function of the regulatory framework that we have to operate under, unfortunately.
And my only concern, and I kind of defer to Ron with how we would handle this, is very frequently minor subdivisions don't get developed by a developer. They get developed by individual lots, or lots are sold.
Right.
And so it's what is the mechanism and when is that HOA actually created? In addition, these stormwater improvements are required for the balance of the construction of these lots. So it's almost like they need to immediately be constructed, even if Lot 3 is not constructed first. And so that is among my issues. The next item.
And I think, Laura, the maintenance manual also has to be recorded now, right?
Correct, with the
Yeah.
county. And then, John, can you speak to the actual design? Because we had issues in that this holds water, there's no discharge.
Yes, so we're looking at alternate plans, as you suggested, including a dry well for each house for the roofs only, and then doing the basin as you see. And if push comes to shove, we can take the water along the walkway to the south. There's an inlet that was built by Toll Brothers a couple hundred feet away, so we don't have any flooding in the street. So that's something that we're working on right now.
So, Mr. Chairman, if I could, sort of similar to Jen's comment earlier, I've had a report since May. And so I can appreciate exploring an alternate design, but I haven't
But
seen
you
it.
don't have one.
And similarly, one dry well cannot be maintained by a homeowner. We still need a homeowners association to maintain dry wells within the 3-lot subdivision. I think that's the issue here, is it's a major development. This isn't under the threshold. It actually is prompting the regs. So I would just like to state that for the record.
Thank you.
I know Mr. Plaskanka testified that he did meet with Shari, reviewed the necessary tree removal based upon what's out there on her recommendations. As it relates to item G, the sheds will now be removed, they will not be relocated.
Correct.
And then we had a bunch of issues regarding the need for improvements on Fairfield Road. One talking about extending sidewalk further north to the existing sidewalk so that there be connection. In addition, Fairfield Road is scheduled to be paved, and so we want to make sure that they're aware of the moratorium requirements. Outside agencies approvals. John, can you speak to where you are with those?
I believe we have freehold soil, and the county would, I think we have a waiver from the county.
Do you have any of that in writing that you can submit to the board?
I will provide it to the board, yes.
And then, Mr. Chairman, item 5 contains very technical engineering comments. So with that, I would accept if Mr. Plaskanka would agree to comply. But you will see in here, there's some beefy stormwater comments.
Yeah.
But again, Mr. Plaskanka, you agree to comply with these in totality?
Yes.
Essentially, Mr. Chairman, that gets them through the engineering review.
So just a question, if you do all of the things that you say you're going to comply with in this CME report, does it change your plan? I mean, is there a modification in the location of certain structures or certain dimensions altered?
There are some minor changes, but the basic 3-house subdivision stays the same. There's some grading issues that Laura pointed out, and the detention basin may change in shape a little bit. We may have pipe running down the street, but there's nothing in terms of the planning here that's going to change.
Okay.
I mean, aside from my concerns about the creation of undersized lots, we have a number of items under item 5 of our March letter, which basically says that the areas in the final plat does not match the zoning table, setbacks don't match. So those are things that would need to be corrected should the board act favorably. We have been beating people up here, there, and everywhere to put sidewalk in, given like the issues. So Fairfield Road, I think they should have to put sidewalk in.
We've agreed to the sidewalk and curb along the road, an extension of the sidewalk to meet up to Toll Brothers Mount Laurel housing.
So the only other thing I have is the applicant indicated the existing chain link fence would be relocated along the proposed property lines or removed. So I'm not sure, are you relocating them or are you removing them?
The sheds,
The chain link fence?
we're going to eliminate it.
Okay. So, I mean, other than the fact that my professional planning recommendation, and I know that they have Jim Higgins, so I'm gonna reserve judgment, but I'm not an advocate of creating undersized lots, so.
Eileen,
Yes, Jackie Pike has now joined the hearing.
thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
If there's no further questions of Mr. Plaskanka, we can move on to the planning testimony.
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Higgins, do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give this board is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please state and spell your name for the record.
James Higgins, Higgins, and I am a licensed planner in the state. I have been licensed for approximately 46 years. I have testified before boards throughout the state, including this board and the zoning board of Howell Township. I have represented a number of New Jersey municipalities as a professional planning consultant, and currently I've been the consultant to the Township of Ocean for about 45 years now.
Okay, we'll accept your credentials.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Higgins, you're familiar with the Leon Avakian letter of March 23rd that Jen just referred to?
Yes, I am.
And obviously with Jen's comments, your testimony will be very good this evening. Would you please address the planning issues and the variances that have been laid out in that letter?
Yeah, surely. The variances that are before the board now at this point in time are for 3 lots, all of which are undersized for the 2-acre requirement of the ARE2 zone. You have a 4.9-acre parcel, and that parcel is situated so that the existing residence is located right in the middle of the parcel. So that in order to subdivide that parcel into 2 parcels, you would have to remove that existing residence. And that's one issue that as a planner I have a problem with when you have a viable existing residence on a site, and the site is very much oversized for the character of the area, and I will get into that too, because Jen will have counter arguments to what I'm saying, but I do want to get that onto the record, is that this lot is 4.9 acres. If you look at the 500-foot radius of the subject lot, there are 32 residential lots. There are also some open space and farming lots that are not strictly residential lots. But there are 32 residential lots within 500 feet of the subject site, of which 24 are less than 1 acre in size. And all 32 are substantially smaller than the 3 lots that the applicant is proposing here. The largest lot in that 500-foot area is 57,000 square feet, and that's 13,000 square feet smaller than the smallest of the lots that's being proposed by this subdivision. And I think it's very important to understand that while the surrounding lots in this area are smaller, they were also created with your lot averaging subdivision requirement, so that the density overall, even though you don't have a density requirement, the density overall for the larger subdivisions surrounding the subject site is averages out to 2 units per acre. But the perception, somebody driving down the street, looking at the lots, and then looking at this subject site as it currently exists, or as it would exist with 2 conforming lots, would very clearly notice that this subdivision, this site is out of character with the residential character of this area. And that's what planning and zoning is about. It's about the perception the residential character. And if this were a 20-acre parcel and the applicant were coming in for a major subdivision on a 20-acre parcel and looking for all of the lots to be undersized without any dedication of property, I wouldn't be here. But this is basically the hole in the donut. When you look at the exhibit, and I'm not sure which exhibit number that was given, but you can see that all of the lots surrounding the subject site are much smaller, even than the lots that are being proposed. So this is really, it's a C2 variance. It's not a C1. And there's no question that you could take this lot, knock the house down in the middle, which I think is a very inefficient approach to begin with, and I think contrary to the purposes of the municipal land use law. But I think you could knock that down and have two lots that are over 2.5 acres in size, and they would still be over 2 times the size of the surrounding residential lots. And the perception of somebody coming down the street would look at those and know they're larger lots, and more importantly, because they're so much larger lots, they could have much larger houses on them than any of the surrounding residential lots, so that it would be out of character. And really, that's what planning and zoning is about, is character. Municipal land use law requires that zoning give reasonable consideration to the character of an area. And clearly, when you have one small lot like this in an area where you have much larger subdivisions that have created smaller lots, to require that one small lot to comply with the 2-acre requirement of the zone, when actually the zone does permit much smaller lots with the alternative forms of development for major subdivisions, but to create a subdivision or to require this lot to remain the way it is right now, I think is not a good planning alternative. I think what's being proposed here is a far superior planning alternative than requiring either the lot to stay as it is now or to require it to be subdivided into 2 lots again that are much larger. That's really what planning and zoning is all about, is perception in this instance. And I think the municipal land use law supports that, because lot area is basically an avatar for density. You don't have a density requirement, but you do have a lot area requirement. And they're related. They're not exactly the same, but they're very strongly related. And when you look at the land use law, it requires a D variance for a density variance, except in the case of a minor subdivision. It relaxes the standard for a minor subdivision and allows that minor subdivision to be created via C variance if the density is greater and the lots are smaller than the ordinance would require. And I think that's what's being proposed here, and I think it's consistent. I think the land use law envisions situations such as this where you would have something that's the hole in the donut, that's out of character with the surrounding area and what's perceived to be the zoning of the surrounding area. And I think really what's being proposed here is a much better planning alternative. In addition, and I know there's some question about what the zoning board's decision was, and Ron was correct that there's supposed to be a certification of a non-conforming use. And in the 2010, I guess it was, the zoning board made a determination that the apartment on this site is a pre-existing non-conforming use, and I don't know the procedure that was used before the board at the time. I did see Jen's report. Jen's report says it was an interpretation, so she can probably expand upon that somewhat, where she came up with the fact that it was an interpretation as opposed to a certification of nonconformity.
It's the word that they used in the resolution.
It is the word,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, but realistically, by eliminating the nonconforming use and eliminating any doubt as to whether it's permitted or not, is, again, a superior planning alternative. And I agree with Jen 100% that you don't want to go around creating nonconforming lots. But there are exceptional circumstances that justify that, where the benefits and the better planning alternatives to do so. And I think this is one of those cases. Again, if this were a larger lot, or if the surrounding lots were 2 acres in area, I wouldn't be here tonight. But when you look at the character of this area And what's perceived as you're riding down Fairfield Road, you're looking at much smaller lots, lots with 100-foot frontage, which is what these lots have, which the frontage does conform. It's the width that doesn't conform on each of the lots. Your ordinance has a frontage of 100 feet, but requires a width of 200 feet, which is not unusual for ordinances because they take into account that you might be on a cul-de-sac or you might have irregularly shaped lots, but they wanted 200 feet setback. But there are, as the applicant has presented to the board, and again, the application is before you, is for one additional variance for the lot coverage on the center lot. And I have seen the exhibit that the applicant, that Mr. Pasonka was talking about for the 14.75% coverage, reducing that coverage under the 15%. And I actually was under the impression it had been submitted. I didn't realize it hadn't been submitted. But that can be done so that the only variances that would exist in terms of the bulks, in terms of setbacks and so on would be, well, not in terms of setbacks, would be the lot frontage and the lot area for each of the lots. And then there was also the issue of the drainage basin, the infiltration basin in the front yard, which would be a variance. And quite frankly, if this lot, looking at the topography of the lot, I believe, and I'm not an engineer, so John can probably talk to it better than I can, is if this lot were developed with a much larger home and with tennis courts, basketball court, or whatever on it that increase the impervious surface, you would probably have to have that basin in the same location anyway, because that's the way the water flows. So I don't think that variance relates directly to this subdivision, but it's a part of the application. So it's something you do have to consider. So when I look at this, I really think that what's being proposed here is a superior planning alternative than many of the other alternatives that could be done on this site. And I think it's an application that can be approved, and I don't think it's contrary to the intent of your ordinance. If this piece of property were part of one of those other surrounding major subdivisions, you probably would have 2 or 3 additional lots on that were substandard in terms of area. And again, without.
I have to jump in. 2 or 3 additional lots?
No.
I mean.
Additional lots, I mean, in addition to those other subdivisions, not in addition to what the applicant's proposing.
I mean, first of all, let's just go back. You are relying upon all these undersized lots or all these smaller lots to justify your situation. They were done through an averaging, the open lands.
Hold on, let's just explore that for a moment, because I haven't seen anything that
I
talks
100%
about
agree.
that. So when you say that all of these, I can't get a history of this lot. We have a history of how all of the other lots were created? There was a subdivision that did lot averaging? How do we know that?
Well, I mean, as far as the Toll Brothers subdivision, I guess I can represent on the record since I was the attorney.
Todd, we cannot hear you.
As far as the Toll Brothers subdivision, I was the attorney. I can represent on the record. There was a cluster subdivision. There's a dedicated open space across the street, which is on the map.
Okay, so let's follow along that lines. You're not guaranteed a lesser lot size if you don't utilize one of these other mechanisms, which gives us these dedicated open space lots. You don't get to rely upon a smaller lot size that was done based on a subdivision utilizing a cluster or averaging plan, which gives us a big fat open space lot. If you did lot averaging, you'd get 2 houses and an open space lot. So, is that what you're proposing?
No.
But you're not. You're proposing 3 undersized developable lots. So I just have to say, I do not agree one bit with the testimony that's been proposed. All those lots that he's relying upon around him were created under a cluster, which gives, you have to do a lot yield. If he did a lot yield on this property, it'd be 2 lots. And then you get to reduce them and provide an open space lot. So the fact that all these lots that he's relying upon are less than, are based upon a mechanism in our ordinance which doesn't give him extra density. which is what he's asking for.
I want to be very clear, because I think there's something quite important in what we've been saying, and I
Yeah.
want to make sure that it's highlighted. The reason that our ordinance provides for the clustering option, as Jim was saying, is that there's a public benefit that is conferred, which is the large open space lot. So, Mr. Higgins, do you know how large the dedicated open space was in the Toll Brothers subdivision?
I have seen the figures, but I don't recall them. I believe
for it.
around 60 acres, but that's,
So,
that's,
in-
that's a
So what
guess
the
in my
ordinance
mind.
established was,
It's a million.
in exchange for permitting the smaller, or the more concentrated density, I'm sorry, you said something around 60 acres?
Ron, it's 1,500,000 square feet divided by 43,000. Probably 30 some odd lots. 30,000, 30 acres, something like that.
So there's about 30 acres that went,
Over 30. I mean, if I could just, if the board looks at the exhibit,
Guys, I understand your
you
point. It's really
see
simple.
the
Where they're taking a
700,000.
pre-existing-
well, Todd, just let them finish and you can respond.
Thank you.
If you look at the top of the map, this is their exhibit. This area, 754,302 square feet, dedicated space to Howell, open space to Howell. If you look down here, block 178, lot 22.07, 1,513,348 square feet. That's roughly 34-plus acres dedicated to the Howell, open space dedicated to Howell Township. I don't know, this farm is 3 million square feet. I don't know. That-
That's an actual farm.
Yeah,
That's privately.
outside, but if you just take those two, you're over the 35 acres, and that's dedicated open space, and that's clear from the exhibit they provided.
So I think, just for purposes of when you're evaluating the arguments, it's not, there was a subdivision that permitted smaller lots. There was an ordinance that the Township Council adopted that allowed that to happen because over, that amount of acreage was being dedicated. I think that that's important to keep in mind when you're evaluating.
Right.
And that is what my testimony was, that they were created under a different aspect of the ordinance, but they're there. And somebody riding down the street does not have the ordinance on his lap, he does not have the subdivision plans on his lap. He's looking at what is there, and we'll be looking at this site, and it'll be very different than the surrounding sites, most likely with much larger homes, and be out of character. And that's the planning benefit. The benefit is not that the applicant is giving property to the town, because he's not.
We're taking away the non-conforming use.
Yeah, and we're taking
So, I
away-
mean, I would just submit to the board that, as Ron has stated, the impetus, and Laura just found another open space lot in this area that's another 700,000 square feet. So you're almost at 3 million square feet of open space for this development in this area, which is almost 70 acres of open space dedicated to the town in order to justify. Plus, in order to even qualify for these benefits, you have to do a yield plan, which gives you an as-of-right subdivision, which you cluster down, but you don't get any extra lots. They want to avail themselves of that benefit, it's 2 lots. And and the issue is that the fact that the house is in smack dab in the middle, that doesn't allow this to be divided into 2 conforming lots, that's not us, that's them wanting to keep that property. I do not agree at all with the testimony. I think the creation of these undersized lots without the public benefit is not justified. I think that, and to be quite clear, as I said, my letter's dated March, Laura's letter's dated May. We've had meetings with these guys and have reiterated the fact that the board is not inclined to grant undersized lots. It's probably going to be a very, very heavy lift, so it should not become a surprise. But in my opinion, if they want more than 2 lots in this area, it's kind of bad planning.
So, and Mr. Higgins, I just want to make sure that the board is clear in terms of arguments for positive and negative criteria. And I think I understood you properly, but please correct me if I'm wrong. The negative criteria would be that there would be a substantial detriment to the public welfare and to the intent and purpose of the zone plan if these lots were conforming but larger than the minimum required and had houses that may be larger than others in the community?
No, that's part of the positive. It's a superior.
Then tell me what the
plan-
negative
let me
criteria
finish.
is.
Oh, yeah, I'll get there. It's a superior planning alternative because the lots that are being created here are much more consistent with the character of Fairfield Road, in particular, the frontage of Fairfield Road. And I agree 100% that those smaller lots were created under a different mechanism in your ordinance. But this is about the perception of the area.
Well, no,
and the lot- and the
but
lot
what my
size.
question was, Mr.
I know,
Higgins,
I'm
and
getting there.
I guess I was wrong, was what's the negative criteria?
Okay, the negative criteria is that while you do have variances for lot area, you have variances for lot width. In fact, the other variances, for example, building setbacks. The setbacks for the buildings substantially, or front and rear setbacks substantially exceed the ordinance requirements. And they meet or exceed the side setback requirements. I don't have those exact numbers, but the rear setbacks are substantially greater than the ordinance permits, multiple times greater. Okay. In addition, when you look at the building coverages, the building coverage that's permitted is 12%. Lot 1, which is one of the building lots, has 3.99% building coverage. That's 1/3. Lot 3 has 4% building coverage. That's 1/3 of the 12%. The center lot with the existing residence has 6.65%. So it's a little bit more than 50% of the building coverage that's permitted. Okay? The lot coverages, what you have before you now, and again, that's not what the applicant is proposing. I believe from what John's discussing is that the application is being amended. But what you have, the coverage is permitted as 15%. Lots 1 and 3 are less than 8% lot coverage. Lot 2, as presented to the board, is a little over 15%. But again, when you calculate the total coverage for the 3 lots as proposed, it's about 10%. And with the proposed change that John has discussed, and again, I have seen that sketch, that plan, the coverage on Lot 2 will also be below the 15% at 14.75%. So there's no substantial negative impact to the ordinance. If there is a negative impact, because you do have 3 lots that are smaller, and the courts have said, if you have a variance, that's negative impact. But it's not a substantial negative impact when you take everything else into account.
That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Anything else?
Nothing to
Is
say.
that your entire presentation?
I believe that concludes our presentation.
Okay. Guess I'll open it up to the public.
For both questions and comments.
Yeah, for both questions and comments. If anybody from the public has any questions or comments for the applicant, please come forward. Okay, seeing none, I'm going to close the portion to the public. Anybody from the board have any questions, concerns, comments?
I got one. Ron, going back to that zoning interpretation, certification, public meeting, whatever we want to call it, is that a requirement right now in order to move forward with this application?
Well, there's a murky past to this, I would say. Here's the best that I could put together, looking at everything. It appears that the zoning officer said that they needed a use variance in order to retain the apartment. And it looks like there may have been an appeal that was filed to the zoning board, and that's under Section 70A of the municipal land use law. But Section 68 of the municipal land use law says you can only be declared non-conforming in 2 ways. One, the zoning officer can do it, but it has to be done within a year of a change in a zoning ordinance. Other than that, there has to be an application for certification of nonconformity filed with the zoning board, which is a public hearing that requires notice. These things all seem to be kind of crumbled together, and while it was filed under Section 70A and they needed Section 68, the decision looks like it was made under Section 70B, which nobody ever asked for. So we're left with what we're left with. We don't possess jurisdiction really to overturn the zoning board. I think that, it was 10 years ago, it was different members, different attorney at that time. I think moving forward, what probably needed to happen was that, they could have appealed the zoning officer. I think the zoning officer did what they were supposed to. And if the applicant didn't like it, they could have got a certification. But part of that also would have been proofs that it lawfully existed, not just that it's been there a long time, but that it lawfully existed. You can't just get away with having an illegal use for a number of years and then it somehow becomes
Just
legal.
because it was there.
So there was a lot of things that were required here that don't seem to have happened. But I think, we're left with this resolution and we can't overturn it. I'm sort of skeptical about the manner in which it was handled, but I think we accept what is in the resolution, that it's a non-conforming use. But that non-conforming use, from a legal perspective, doesn't give them a leg up on getting the variance relief. It just allows, it provides constitutional protection for them to retain what they had, not to change what they had, but to retain it. And as a matter of fact, if they are required to get rid of that apartment, because if they didn't, they would need a D-variance, because then they would be intensifying the previous nonconformity. So they're not doing anyone any favors by getting rid of the apartment. That's required in order for them to remain a permitted use in this application.
Okay. Anybody else? So what are we, but are we're still missing information, correct?
I don't really think you are. I think that what they've provided to us, regardless so let's just take the coverage situation out of it, right? The variance for the creation of the undersized lots is the big ticket issue. If you guys are not inclined to approve that, then the coverage issue becomes a non-issue. So if you are inclined to approve that, then he's going to have to provide us documentation to show that he doesn't require that relief. He's not asking for it anymore. But it's not even worth getting into that issue
Right.
So let's talk about the area. If you guys are not inclined to do that, then the balance of these issues go away.
Okay.
Same thing with Laura with the basin, all that other stuff.
Right, I was going to say this. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I really don't think, that's how we do things. I don't think that we ever, create non-conforming lots on purpose. That's how I personally feel. For as long as I've sat up here, I've never seen it happen in 13, 14 years. Have we ever created non-conforming lots? So,
But you do have one now.
excuse me?
You do have one now.
No, you didn't.
We didn't create it.
What he's saying is create. You did not create this
Yeah, we didn't
lot.
create this lot.
The board determined that it existed, and it existed lawfully prior to any ordinance that would have prohibited it. That's what the zoning board, that's what you have to interpret the zoning
Right.
board's resolution as saying.
So,
No, Mr. Higgins, I respect your testimony as far as what you're saying we should, possibly approve it because then it's matching to what's surrounding it. But when's the last time you drove down Fairfield Road over there?
I've driven down it a number of times, especially with looking at this application.
Okay, so that's, we're all familiar with the piece.
Yes.
On that road is residential, farmland, and as you head towards 33, it turns right into light industrial, commercial, you know what I mean? So, where I have an issue is, it's what you're saying is, if it suits the area to put three instead of two, that suits you and your applicant. That's your opinion. That's not, that's not how we interpret
It's
it.
it's my professional.
Yeah, it's your
planning
professional opinion, and I
Yeah.
appreciate your professional, but that doesn't mean that we should allow, it's 2-acre zoning, like our board, like our professional said, maybe you should just divide it in half and put 2 bigger houses, all these roads in Howell have massive houses, where they put up 2-3-acre houses, and like you're saying, basketball courts or tennis courts, whatever they're doing, if you got a 5-acre piece, talk to your applicant, and, maybe, like I said, take the house down and cut it in half.
That's just it. You can have 2 conforming lots if you want to. That's entirely up to your applicant. You're choosing to come to us and ask us for 3 non-conforming lots. You have the ability to create the 2 conforming lots if you chose to.
Yeah.
Anybody else have any questions,
Well,
comments? or-
Just to comment on, just like you'd mentioned about the perception, you understand your testimony on the perception, however, you're looking, you're talking apples and oranges, basically, because you're talking about a development with aggregate open space and stuff like that. That's a development. When you're driving down the road, you see lots, it's a lot. It's not a development. So it's kind of like, in my perception is it's apples and oranges.
Just as a point of clarity, and, just for my own sake, no public sewer available on Fairfield with all the development over there?
We're not in the sewer service area, believe it or not. All those lots across the street have septic, and lots next door have septic.
It's so,
I got friends that were, it's all septic.
it's like surprising.
It's not.
I guess not.
It's not.
It's Howell.
There's public water there, but no sewer.
Yeah, no sewer.
Yeah, well, that makes even less sense.
Any other questions, comments? Then I'll accept a motion.
I'm going to make motion for denial.
Mr. Chairman, could I have a brief closing argument?
Oh,
Just a brief one, nothing.
apologize.
Just take a minute.
You're right. Please, summation.
Thank
I'm
you,
sorry.
sir. Obviously, this is not an easy application for the board or the applicant, but regardless of how all those 1-acre lots got to surround my client's property, the fact is they do. I realize that 2 of the major subdivisions that gave dedicated open space to the township in exchange for cluster options and smaller lots. Not a question. I did one of them. The bottom line is the applicant is proposing 3 lots, each of which are 1.6 acres in size, with absolutely no detriment, no inspection is going to affect surrounding properties negatively in any way, shape, or form. My point is, in the same vein as a developer donating the open space for smaller lots and a cluster option, my client is proposing to eliminate a pre-existing, non-conforming use that's been there for 45, or maybe longer, years, a garage apartment next to this property. I mean, in exchange for the minor variances that we're asking. We're not asking for a half-acre lot, we're asking for 1.6-acre lots. You can see from the exhibit, there's no question the property is the hole in the donut. And when we've made the argument, even if we had 2 lots, for some reason we shouldn't keep the house. I mean, planning shows you should keep existing houses if you can. It's a beautiful home. My client paid a fortune for it. There's no reason to knock it down. And if you had 2 lots and kept the house, you're still going to have a variance on the 3rd lot, on the 2nd lot. You've heard Mr. Higgins' testimony. It's clear that the benefits associated with it will outweigh any detriments. There's no negative effect to surrounding property. I get it's a tough application, but my client's it's not like he's asking for a favor. He's willing to eliminate a long-term, pre-existing, non-conforming use. And I think that's just being lost in the translation here. We have some issues with engineering. We're willing to address them. But I really think the plan itself is a much better plan than you have today. It's going to stay the way it is if it's denied. I mean, it's the way it is. If it's not the rest, it's the way it is. It's been that way 45 years, it'll stay there another 45 years. But you have an opportunity here, in my opinion, and my planner's opinion, to make it a little better. And that's up to you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Okay, so, do you renew your motion?
I'll make motion for denial.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, I say this on all motions to deny. What you're voting on is the motion. So voting yes to the motion means you're voting to deny.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Cristiano?
Yes.
Mr. Greenfield?
Yes.
Mr. Husser?
Just before I vote, I thought the testimony was well said, but I think if we did accept this as is, it sets a precedence for this board moving forward with other applicants, and that's exactly what we don't want. So I'm voting yes.
Mr. Leggio?
I agree with Mr. Husser, what he just said. You're putting us in a tough spot, so, yes.
Mr. Seaman?
Yes.
Councilman Gazier?
Yes.
Mr. Mercer?
Yes.
And Chairman Bavai.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you very much for your time this evening.
Have a good evening. Take a 5-minute recess.
The board will now take a 5-minute recess. The planning board will now reconvene.
Okay. Next up, case number SP 1107, New Jersey Ruckel Realty, LLC, preliminary and final major site plan with ancillary variance and design waiver relief. John? What's this? This is the last one.
Morning, ladies and gentlemen of the board. My name's Blaine Miller. I am the attorney for the applicant, A.J. Ruckel Realty. This is regarding a property where we're seeking to have a addition approved of approximately, an addition approved to an existing warehouse manufacturing facility. The purpose of the addition is going to be primarily light manufacturing and repackaging. We'll have some testimony from the applicant regarding that. I have 5 witnesses. John Manillo, our engineer. We have John McDonough, our planner. We have Mr. Seckler, who is going to provide testimony with regard to traffic. And we will have our architect testify as well. I'm going to start with John Manillo, if I may.
Okay, you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to provide this board is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please state and spell your name for the record.
Sure. Legal name is Giovanni, Giovanni. Last name Manilio, Manilio.
Okay, Mr. Manilio, can you tell the board the background of your qualifications, training, experience, and licensure?
Yep. So I have a Bachelor of Science in Civil Engineering from Syracuse University. I've been licensed in the state for 15 years and currently in good standing. I'm also licensed in New York, professional engineer, president of Mantera Design, testified in front of numerous boards throughout the state. I have not testified in front of this board before, but I have testified in front of numerous boards in front of Monmouth County, including Freehold, Eatontown, West Long Branch, Atlantic Highlands, Howell Township.
Okay, we'll accept your credentials.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Manilio, can you walk the board through the application, the design, and the proposed addition?
Yeah, so I'm just actually going to reference an aerial that we put together, and it's on the board here. It's just an aerial of the,
Has that been previously marked, Eileen?
No.
Yeah, that has not yet been provided to the board as part of the submission, correct?
One moment. This will be A18. So if you could just describe what this is.
Yeah, so this is an aerial state with the imagery with the property highlighted in yellow. entitled Aerial Exhibit and Roll of Tile with the date of August 3rd, 2023.
Okay, so we'll just call this an aerial. It's Exhibit A18 dated August 3rd, 2023. So
Would
you
you
can
like
just
that
put
marked?
A18 on there, and then you can move forward.
So as I mentioned, the site is highlighted in yellow in the middle of the page, with north kind of to the top right corner of the page. So the property is known as 10 Ruckle Avenue, Block 230, Lot 13.01, located in the SED2 zone, which is the Special Economic Development Zone. The majority of the property frontage is actually on Route 33 and 34, but there is no access off of that highway. There's also additional access off of, or frontage along Ellis Avenue with no access presently there. Ruckle Avenue, which there is access, and the only access to the site as of right now. And Tinton Falls Road, there's frontage as well, but with no access. Property borders with the R50 zone, which is the residential 50 zone to the west of the site. And you can see there's single-family dwellings located there. There's the HD3, which is the highway development zone, to the west and to the north. And then to the south and to the east is more of the SED2 zone, which is the special economic zone. There's vacant land and on Route 33, 34 to the north of us. Like I mentioned earlier, to the west is single-family residential and one retail at the corner. Conrail and industrial properties are to the east of us. And to the south, there's one residential property and then more industrial facilities. The lot has an area of 26.7 acres, and approximately half of the site, the northern portion, is currently developed with buildings and development. Currently, the main entrance to the site comes off of Ruckle Avenue. As you come into the site, to the left, there is a parking lot that is currently there. That one is approximately 20 feet off of the property line. Then as you continue into the site, there is more parking to the north. And the building is kind of right in the middle when you come in through the access. The existing building is 89,133 square feet, which does also have a one-story office component, which is kind of in the middle of the building. There's numerous loading docks and driving doors, and they're kind of scattered around the whole building. They're not just in one location. The building does have access to the rails on the back. So the owner does have access rights to that. It's currently not operable, but there is rights to it if he does want to choose to upgrade the tracks and utilize that. Currently, there's one existing freestanding sign, and it's at the corner of Ruckle and Tinton Falls Road, which will be removed as part of this application. Additionally, on the site, on the southeast corner of the site, there is an ordinary resource wetland, which is isolated and does have a 50-foot buffer. We do have a letter of interpretation from DEP that was issued in September of last year. And we'll present that to your professionals if we haven't already. And we have submitted for a GP6, which allows to fill in a portion of the isolated wetlands, and that approval is still pending. The existing site was currently on septic and well that has currently been converted. So now it is tied into the sewer system, public sewer system, and I was told imminently they should be tied to the water system as well. They're in the final phases of testing. So hopefully within the next week or two, they should be tied to the public water as well. Currently, there's 134 parking spaces on the site. 74 of them are in that first lot that's closest to the residential property as soon as you get off of Ruckle Avenue. And the closest parking there is about 22 feet to the residential property. And the closest part of the current building is about 182 feet from the residential properties. So now I'd like to go to the next exhibit, which A19?
Correct.
Okay, and this is entitled Marl tile aerial overlay. Again, it's the state ortho imagery, and on top of it, we had rendered these proposed site improvements of the site, and this has a date of August 3rd, 2023. And I'll just walk through the proposed improvements and what we're proposing to do as part of this application. So on the, lower left side of the exhibit is in brown the proposed new construction or new building. It's about 137,925 square feet. And it will consist of 18 loading docks and 2 drive-in doors. Of the approximately 138,000 square foot addition, 4,000 square feet would be office space, 61,000 would be manufacturing or industrial space, and then 73,000 square feet would be for accessory warehousing purposes associated with the manufacturing portion. A new driveway is being proposed on the far south side of the property off of Tinton Falls Road. This will be the main access driveway for the facility moving forward. This will be the main access or only access for truck access. And Ruffle Avenue will be maintained as an access to the site, but just for passenger vehicles. And we will be able to, or be willing to sign that to say for passenger vehicles only. Additionally, the applicant has agreed to and wants to pursue changing the address of the site from 10 Ruckle to a Tinton Falls address or Tinton Falls Road address. Again, that would be contingent on getting approvals from the post office master and the tax assessor as far as having that approved, but we think that would help with getting traffic off of Ruffle Avenue. If somebody puts it in their GPS, that they would get onto Tinton Falls Road, onto the site. Additionally, we are proposing a 38 vehicle parking lot to the south of the proposed addition. And we had reconfigured the parking lot to the west portion of the site right off of Ruffle to now be greater than 50 feet from the residential properties. Currently, it's about 22 feet. In doing so, we're increasing the buffer and giving more of a four-season buffer there with more landscaping and proposing a fence as well. For the project site, we are proposing a total of 193 parking spaces, not including any credits for EV parking spaces, and 193 spaces are required per the breakdown. Additional site improvements that we are proposing. So we are proposing a small pump house. Once you come off of Ruffle, it's that small brown rectangle. And I don't believe it's noted in any reports, but we believe that is a variance for having an accessory structure within the front yard. The pump house, the main function is for fire suppression with the new addition and with the loop of the water main that goes around the building and fire hydrants. Speaking to the MEP engineer that is working on this, that is the most efficient location for it. That's where the water comes into the site, and it's before the loop system. So that's the reason for the location of it. Additionally, we do have 2 frontages, so we have a lot of front yard and not a lot of side or rear yard, given the placement of the building and the constraints with the wetlands. We are proposing a new refuge area to the west portion of the loading area. That will serve the new addition. There is an existing trash compactor on the north side of the building that is off one of the loading docks, and that will stay as well. To the west by the residential, there is you can see there's a lot of landscaping that we're proposing. One that is part of the tree replacement, where we could plant trees and provide more landscaping and provide more of a buffer with the residential neighbors. In addition, the applicant is proposing to put kind of a walking trail and a small little picnic or kind of patio area out there for seating purposes for employees. As far as stormwater drainage for the site, we are proposing several basins. We're proposing 3 small-scale bioretention basins to treat water quality. They're located closest to the loading dock area, and we are proposing 1 large-scale basin furthest to the south, which will control quantity on the site. And to capture the roof water, we're using that as recharge and putting that in a below-ground infiltration system that's behind the building. So we do comply with the stormwater rules per the regulations. As far as signage, we are proposing one building mounted sign and one freestanding sign. The freestanding sign will be moved to the new driveway at Tinton Falls Road. Both signs will comply with the sign requirements. The facade sign will be 150 square feet, which is less than 20% of the facade, or 1,500 square feet, whichever is less. The freestanding sign will be 36 square feet, and it will be 5 feet by 12 feet, with 3-foot display and a 2-foot base, and it's located 10 feet from the right-of-way. As far as the building itself, the addition does comply with all the bulk requirements. We're not asking for any variances for setbacks, building coverage, or impervious coverage. We are asking for the one variance for the accessory structure within the front yard, which is the pump house. And then we are, and there's another variance for the buffer. A lot of that has to do with the pre-existing nonconformity of it. So a 50-foot buffer needs to be provided, which will include several items, either a setback of a building, which is 200 feet from the buffer, setback of the parking of a certain distance, or providing a combination of a berm, landscaping, or fencing to protect the residential zones. So we are providing 50-foot of vegetation between the residence and the parking lot by moving the parking lot further away from the neighbors. We are adding a fence on that side as well, and there's existing mature vegetation on that side. I believe we don't comply with it because of the existing building and the office area is only, let's see here, 132 feet from the buffer and 182 feet from the residential.
Can you just walk us through that, because you ripped through that pretty quickly, and I have a number of items in my letter regarding that. So can you use the exhibit and show the board what you're talking about?
Yeah, so let me just go through your letter so I'll make sure I don't miss anything here. Right, so the requirement is that there's a 50-foot buffer, and if I recall correctly, the ordinance requires 2 of the items in that buffer section.
Well, first and foremost, you don't provide 50 feet, so that's number one.
Or? You
don't provide it. So that's number one. You have to provide 50 feet first. That's one variance. That's 63A. Then 63D is all these other items. And then 63E is the 4-season buffer. So it's not simply just one size fits all. There's separate sections. So when you get to the west, up near Ruckle, and the site comes to some kind of point, you do not have 50 feet, period.
Oh, okay, so you're saying the existing driveway of Ruckle Avenue itself is not conforming?
No, I say that you're not providing a 50-foot buffer adjacent to the residentially zoned property to your west.
So I think with our new parking layout.
If you pull the plan they have on the ground.
Correct, okay.
You see that little point at the top of your plan? Yep.
Yep.
Is that 50 feet wide?
No.
Because the property adjacent to you is residential. So you don't have the 50 feet is what I'm trying to get to.
Okay, so yeah, so that is, that's a hardship with the property dimensions. It's a triangle, and it's not possible to get 50 feet at the point.
So then the second piece of it, which I don't disagree with, is that basins are not permitted within the buffer area, and parking areas, et cetera, are located in your 50-foot buffer. So now are you telling me that the parking area, you provide the 50 feet around the parking area?
Correct, yes.
Okay.
And I don't believe we have any basins within the 50 feet as well.
Okay, and then the last is a 4-season buffer, which I guess is to you, Sherry.
I did meet out there on site with them. So we did review the trees that are existing. They are worth keeping. And they're, adding additional trees as I recommended. So they did work with me on the buffer. And the wooded area over by lot 11 with the point, that is densely wooded, which is why we don't, we didn't even consider landscaping in that area.
So if the board looks up at the exhibit I have, what Sherry's saying is, if you see this triangle, see how the green's different? See how this green is a little bit different than this green by color? So this is all existing vegetation that Sherry indicated, based upon the field, is in good condition. And then similarly, you see this area? So again, as Sherry testified, this is the area she walked, and she feels it's better to leave that existing vegetation. What they're doing is proposing a 6-foot-high vinyl fence, and that'll be along that buffer, and then supplementing the buffer in the lighter green area. So technically, if you recall, our ordinance requires those two components, whether it be berming, fencing, certain setbacks. So basically, they don't comply because what we've asked, or what I heard, and Sherry can certainly testify to it, is that she's requested that this existing vegetation remain and that it be supplemented, but that a fence be provided ultimately on that barrier.
Thank you. Appreciate the clarification.
No problem.
Okay. Did you want to go through the other?
Oh, so I was going to go through the design waivers real quick, if that's okay.
Make sure.
Yep. So we have parking lot light levels. So the ordinance requires a light level of 0.56 or 0.5 foot candle average. We are proposing 0.8, which we feel is a de minimis overage from what's permitted. And there's no spillage onto any of the residential or any properties. Driveway widths greater than 24 feet require board approval. We are proposing a driveway of 30 feet off the main axis to provide better safety for truck traffic in and out of the site and to maneuver to the loading dock areas. Curb ramps located no more than 65-foot intervals. We're providing ramps only at the ADA spaces to get access onto the sidewalk. The ordinance does require a 30-foot access road around the entire building for emergency purposes. So what we are doing is we're proposing a 25-foot access road, and we're matching up to the existing access road that's about 20 feet. We did get comments from the fire official, and there was no comments regarding the adequacy or inadequacy of the fire lane. Landscaping between the parking and the building is required. So we did provide landscaping where it was feasible. Obviously, there's some areas with the loading docks where landscaping can't be provided. And I don't believe we're proposing any new landscaping along the existing facade of the building. Parking spaces for commercial and industrial uses shall be within 300 feet of a building entrance. So the furthest space that we have currently is 402.5 feet away. And in existing conditions with the existing parking lot, it's 451 feet away, so we're actually making it better. And again, we don't think that's a far walk. We did a little quick math at 3 miles per hour walking. It's only another 20 seconds to get into the building. Tree replacement, we are asking for to provide a contribution in lieu. So we are proposing or providing as many trees as we can on site. And the deficit will be paid with a contribution. We're working with your professionals, and if we can plant more trees, we will. Public sidewalk and connection to private walkway to the streets. We'd like to pay a contribution in lieu of. There is really not a lot of frontage, which is about the highway, so there's about 110 feet of frontage along Tinton Falls Road. So we'd like to pay a contribution. And lastly, protective devices or bollards between parking and the building. So we are proposing 6-inch high curbing, and the building's being proposed to be solid concrete.
I would just submit that we don't grant that waiver, that you're going to have to put the bollards in. We've had multiple instances here in town where cars have gone through buildings. So the 6-inch curb is not a deterrent for a car to go through a building.
We have in every instance, both this board and the zoning board, anytime parking fronts on the building, bollards are required.
I don't think the applicant objects will comply.
Yeah, they will comply. Need to address signage.
I don't think we have any. I think there's signage still noted as variances, but I believe the latest set of plans only show the 2 proposed signs in compliance.
We addressed parking, correct?
Yes.
If I could maybe help, because I don't know where you guys are, but if you just follow along, maybe in our report, is there someone who's going to speak to operations?
Yes.
Okay.
And that's going to be our next witness. I'm going to call John Marola, who's a principal of both the property owner and the applicant.
Thanks. Do you anticipate any outdoor storage?
No, but the applicant talked about it as well. So they do have 2 trailers that they keep for trade shows, and it goes on and off the site. So it's where they hold so kind of like their trade show.
And where are those vehicles stored?
So they will be stored on the north side of the site, closest to 33 and 34.
In the front yard?
It will be, I guess, within the front yard of 33 and 34.
So that's a variance. We don't allow that.
And just to be clear, those are vehicles that are being stored.
But if there's material in the vehicles, that's outdoor storage,
Okay, thank you.
which we do not permit. And I know you indicated that you're going to work on the contribution, and that you met with Shari out in the field, but have you updated any of that information? If you go to our next comment, there's 6 acres to be removed, 65 replacement trees are indicated, but it appears you have 204 trees proposed.
Yes, I believe our latest set of plans has the updated numbers, but we will verify, and obviously we'll work with Sherry on getting those numbers correct.
And you have a traffic witness who will speak to the traffic generated in the anticipated routes.
That is correct.
There's security fence and gate at the Ruckel Avenue entrance. Is that now also going to be removed?
That will be removed, yes.
What about the path to get to the proposed trash enclosure?
So the path would be just across the loading dock area to the refuse area.
Railroad tracks. You have an architect who's going to speak to the next couple.
Yes.
And I have an attached technical engineering review. Do you agree to comply with those items in totality?
I do, yeah.
Thank you.
Is there anything else you wanted to cover? Okay. I open to any other questions from the professionals or the board?
Is that rail spur active for the existing building?
Not onto the site.
Not onto the site?
No.
Is there any, did you have to do anything with Conrail as far as getting approvals?
As far as was told by the owner, they have the active use of it if they want to, but they are responsible for the maintenance and actually bringing it up to service. It's not serviceable right now.
And it is not currently being used or anticipated to be used.
All right, so that's just the spur. What about the existing Conrail?
That I do not know, to be honest with you. I would assume if they're giving them rights that spur is active, but that's just an assumption.
Do you know when the existing building was built, approximately?
Somewhere in my notes. Says the property was developed in roughly 1961.
The existing building right now, it's what do they manufacture?
So they, the applicant talked more about it, but they pretty much import tile, repackage it, and there's some manufacturing and processing that's done as well.
So currently, there's no 18-wheelers accessing the property, tractor trailer?
There is.
There is, okay.
Yes.
But not staying on site, just loading and going?
I'll let the applicant talk about that, but as far as I know, yeah, it's just loading and going.
Any other questions? Okay. If I may, I'm going to release this witness, and I'm going to call John Marola of A.J. Ruckel and Marola Tile.
Okay, do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give this board is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do. Please
state and spell your name for the record.
My name is John Marola, John, M as in Mary, Erola.
Okay, you can have a seat, Mr. Marola.
Thank you.
And Mr. Marola, as I indicated to the board, you're a principal of the property owner, A.J. Ruckel,
Me and my brother
LLC.
Kevin, we're 50-50 partners.
Okay. And you're also a principal of Marola Tile, which is currently the occupant of the property and the operating business.
Correct. I'm the operating manager.
Okay. This property was acquired from an affiliate of Belfer Lighting, correct? And what do you do with the property?
So currently at the property, we're still sort of ramping it up. The building, since we bought it, has had a lot of things needing to be done with it. It was not really well taken care of. We upgraded the electric. We added solar panels to the roof. It has a lot of unworking bathrooms, so we've now switched from septic to sewer, which is active and running. We switched over to the city water. I think our water is coming from Wall, or has been. And just this week right now, we're draining that big water tower, and they have to reverse the flow through the pump room, and, so we should be up and running with good old Farmingdale water to that Wall water in a few days, so.
Okay. What does Marola Tile do?
So we're in business since 1988. My brother started the company as Bever, and I joined him a year later. And started in Brooklyn, New York, worked through Queens. 2006, I moved out here to New Jersey. I live in Middletown. We had a small place up in Somerset, which is the first building Lane helped us with. Then we purchased another building in 2015 in Manalapan, New Jersey. That building's around 107,000 square feet, and the business has grown. So we import ceramic tile from a lot of small boutique factories, and we sell to people like Home Depot and other just basic tile distributors too. And we sell across the whole country. Ceramic tile comes in as a building material, so it comes on big pallets like lumber, and then people need a box of tiles sent to their home. So the repackaging is we have to take this building material and we package it into cardboard boxes with either bubble wrap, expandable foam, which is not something which you can just do in these 3PL of these big Amazon warehouses. You need professionally trained people that with caring bosses to give them a nice, safe work environment. So that's a big part of what we do. And that's been sort of how we grew the company. But we need to diversify and grow. So the next, with this building, is part of our plans is to add these mosaic manufacturing machines. So they're these tile wet saws, which will cut the tiles into small squares or whatever shape we want. We'll have to clean them off, dry them off, and then we'll put them on a grid, and then they'll be mounted on a mesh, so they'll become those loose sheet mosaics. We're in the process of, like I said, we couldn't just get the building up and running. We owned the building 3 years, just about. But we're now in the process of getting all the electronics in, the transformers, to set up the machines. We're going through all the permit process. We have a water recycling system that has to come in. There's going to be a fully enclosed water system. So if you have questions about that, any water we use will just go away by evaporation, or will be reused in the system. Nothing will go back into the city sewer system.
And this doesn't use or generate hazardous materials or waste, correct?
No, we sell baked dirt. That's what sort of ceramic tiles. We cook dirt, and it's a really cool industry. It really is.
In connection with the acquisition of the property, I know the environmental report asked about a phase one. You had a phase one prepared, correct?
We had a nice phase one.
And there was also
remediation action outcome issued for the property, which approved the property for unrestricted use, correct? There's no deed notice required or the like.
That is corrected, yeah.
Yeah, and we can provide copies of those to the professionals and the board if you
I
would
believe
like.
there's monitoring wells on the property that have slowly been, I guess, abandoned because they were no longer needed, and there's a few left, but supposedly as things go, they show numbers each year. That's expected, at least from our LSRP, that should be all good to go over time.
Yeah, and that was with regard to existing
Correct.
off-site
Yeah.
groundwater.
We're very clean operation.
Okay. There was a question about the storage of vehicles on the property.
Okay, so we have no trucks. Everything, just comes in and out as we get deliveries from import containers from the pier, and we also have tractor trailers we'll pick up as product goes out. But we do just have these 2 trailers of trade show booth material, which doesn't store well in the building because they can only stack 1 high, and so it's convenient for us to keep them in trailers. We currently have them on another site, but it would be nice to keep them there because we plan on moving at least a good portion of operation when we're fully operational out of Manalapan and into Farmingdale, although we plan on maintaining both buildings.
Yeah, and the Manalapan is your real warehousing and distribution
Manalapan
site?
is our primary headquarters right now, correct.
Okay. In terms of what's in these trade show trailers,
it's
generally
display
storing
units,
product?
some metal frames, some light fixtures. The booth's really pretty when we put up, but there's nothing, just, it's stuff,
Okay. Apart from, and where would those 2 trailers be stored?
Well, I would prefer to just put them somewhere in the lot if we can.
In the parking area?
Yeah, not in the loading docks. The loading docks, we expect to just have them cleared.
And you said that you have trailers come in and get unloaded. Do they ever spend any time overnight in the loading dock?
No, well, so certain companies, what they'll do is they'll come and they'll drop a truck, and then they'll pick up the one next to it that's fully loaded. So it's just 1 trip a day. So one sits in the dock, that just stays full for the day as the team loads it through the day. And then the next day they'll show up and take the new full one and leave us a new empty one.
And what is your anticipated number of deliveries per day? If you can, how many trucks in and out?
I'm going to guess right now we get about 20 trucks a day, besides the little UPS and FedEx vans, which I wouldn't really count as, but I guess they're trucks too, right? But about 20 that would require like a CDL driver, air brakes or anything.
You mean like 20 tractor trailers or?
Yeah, 20 tractor trailers. And that might be a big number. I don't sit and count them. I used to, but I'm like too busy worrying about like HR stuff now to count the trucks anymore.
Now, these trucks are coming off of 33?
Well, this is over in Manalapan, so in Farmingdale right now, it's a couple of weeks at most. We're just doing some extra storage there and a little bit of pick and pack. We're testing some new automation because we want to put, one of the risks when you lifting stuff heavy like tile is injuries to your staff. So we're looking to either put in robots or a little bit of conveyor system to move things around a little bit.
When we're talking about things like trucks coming in and out, I'm going to ask you to limit your testimony to what's going to occur at Farmingdale, not Manalapan, just so that the board
I will only
is
talk about Farmingdale. It's a couple of weeks.
Okay. What are your hours of operation anticipated?
Anticipated, we expect the building to be open from 7 to 7, but the primary hours for staff is 8 to 5, and everyone gets an hour for lunch.
Okay.
And that's Monday through Friday. We close on weekends.
Okay. In terms of operational, I think that was it for my questions, unless there are questions of the professionals or the board.
How many employees, are your employees on shifts, or how many employees do you have?
We run one shift. We have 125 employees. About 65 of them are labor roles. This is Manalapan. In this operation that's currently there right now, there's maybe 2 or 3 people in the warehouse. We have 1 IT person and anywhere from 2 to 6 people in the office.
What is anticipated?
I'm going to guess when we're functioning operational with the current building or with the extension.
With everything.
I would hope that we're lucky enough to have 125, 150 employees.
and probably run the same rate, around 50 labor roles and probably 70 to 80 more professional style roles.
And then just similarly, you testified about trucks. So what do you envision as the number of tractor-trailer deliveries to this site when it's?
I'd say 20.
So,
If we're
okay.
super successful, maybe more. But
What's your best case scenario once you're fully operational?
I wish I was that specific, because sometimes you just sort of run and go, because we learn as we go and the business grows. But I would guess, we're a $40 million company right now, and we're doing 20 trucks a day. If we grow into this building, and we keep both buildings, then it probably would equal that amount. If we decide to abandon the Manalapan building, move full function there, maybe 50% greater number than that. So I'd say 30 trucks a day.
Would it be realistic for you to abandon Manalapan and move everything here?
So this is where, when you have a partner and he's your brother, you have interesting conversations. So he's like, we can rent Manalapan and we can get rent. And then that rent can go and pay the bank back for the money we'll borrow to build
But
the
in
building.
terms of the facility size, to do that volume of business?
I think that the building size would be suitable to help us get to around 60 million, 50% higher than we are now, but not much more than that. At that point,
In
we'd
terms
have
of truck
everything
traffic?
else. I don't expect it to go greater than that on truck traffic.
So your anticipated max at this site would be 30?
30 tractor trailers a day.
Okay.
I'll wait till they're done, I'm gonna ask them questions.
Yeah, so you got 18 bays, right, is what's in the proposed addition?
Correct. Right now, we currently have 8, and it sometimes get tough, where sometimes we'll have trucks lined up, waiting for a spot to empty up, because some are live loads, and so all the ones that are parked take time, and I think we have to dedicate some bays for...
Okay, again, are you talking about Manalapan?
I'm talking about the new building. So imagine we're fully functional with 18 bays. If I don't leave enough room, then I now risk having trucks backed up. And I
You're
believe...
talking about the 18 that you're asking for and the 8 existing.
Oh, no, is it 18 additional? I don't remember all the numbers.
Yeah.
It's 18 additional?
18 on your new...
So that'll just mean that we'll be able to have trucks in no line. We'll have the freedom to move people around and do things. We can have a receiving section and a shipping section and stuff like that.
And these tractor trailers only going to access off of this proposed new road?
I would love to not have tractor trailers go down Ruckle Avenue.
And
You said you were closing Ruckle Avenue.
Yeah, we don't want to have we don't want them to go down Ruckle Avenue. That's sort of a residential block. We want them to go down the new entrance that we're proposing.
if this is approved, you're going to have the entrance off
Tinton
Tinton
Falls
Falls.
Road.
That is where all the commercial traffic would come in, correct?
Correct.
And as the engineer testified, Ruckle Avenue would only be
For passenger
resident
cars.
and would be signed in that way,
Yes.
correct? And to that end, as your engineer testified, you're going to seek to have the address of the building changed from Ruckle Avenue to Tinton Falls Road, correct?
Yes.
So, Mr. Bertoli, you understand, you're there every day, every other day,
Sure,
whatever
yeah.
you do. When you come in off of 33,
I know that my father-in-law lives in Equestria. I'm so familiar with that
so
intersection.
that's a tricky intersection, right? So-
We have signs up to recommend all employees go south.
I'm not talking about passenger cars,
Good.
we're talking about these trucks.
Even vehicles, yeah.
All right, so that intersection at JB's Diner, that
Yeah.
corner, very, very tricky, correct?
Yes, sir.
So, and Tinton Falls Road is only 25 mile an hour road,
Okay?
very narrow,
Yes.
okay? Would it be unfair to ask you, if this was to get approved, no tractor trail, advise the drivers, no tractor trailers coming down off of 33, onto Tinton Falls to make a left, because you understand that?
Oh, yeah, I can advise them. I don't know how I can stop them, but anything I can do to support
You
that.
understand what I'm saying, that tractor trailer's got to swing and make a left into.
I mean, I see them do it all the time because you have the other, but yeah, correct. I would.
Wait. There's no other proposed access other than Tinton Falls Road.
Yeah, what I'm saying
Right,
is.
but we don't want them coming up 33, 34. We want them to go south or come up.
To Asbury Ave, and come back up and around. You can't make them, but there's.
They have no control over 33, 34. So like, they can say whatever they want, but that's a DOT-regulated highway. They have zero control.
That's a
We-
tricky intersection.
We can do one thing though for trucks leaving, is our exit, the new exit onto Tinton Falls Road,
Yeah.
will require left turn only.
And you'd be willing to have it so signed?
100%.
So if you're gonna do a left turn only to go back to Asbury Ave or wherever they're gonna go, then why would it, then coming in off of 33, how about we don't make it accessible to make a left into it, so we don't have accidents? You understand what I'm saying?
I got that, so, and that makes sense, because now it's so inconvenient, they'll never do it a second time, but the first time they do it, they're gonna have to go all the way down to
That
the
trailer should be going back out to the highway.
What would be the mechanism that you would envision to inform the drivers or the companies that are sending the trucks about the pattern that you wish them to follow?
What's reasonable is we can hang signs up on our loading docks reminding drivers. We could probably, when we make deals with people that we know are coming in, inform them, but I have no control over so much.
No, that's why I'm asking. So, I mean, I appreciate you putting it out there. So one of the ways that you're suggesting is internal signage, but you're saying, you as the entity enters into agreements with trucking companies to provide services, or you just?
I'm not like, I don't have, we have handshake agreements. We don't have like big official contracts. We're still sort of a small business, even though we're doing pretty good.
Are the trucking concerns engaged by you or somebody like Home Depot that's taking the deliveries?
Yeah, our customers are, I deliver to my loading dock, my customer is providing the delivery. There's sometimes.
That's my question.
There's a few that we have to deal with, so I can go and say, hey, SD's Trucking, please always enter this way when you come to this site.
Well, can you say to Home Depot, whoever, look, Home Depot is not a mom and pop operation. I'm sure that they have some piece of paper that you sign with them.
Piece of paper, but it's sort of like the same piece of paper that my employees should show up on time. It still sometimes happens that people are going to show up late.
Well, I mean, if you can turn the napkin over and maybe say something about this on that, then, I think that would allow you to have a little more, there would be something more substantive behind the offer that you're making.
Okay.
So, for example, your recurring customers, like Home Depot, which is one of your majors, you would instruct them that the drivers are to come in off Atlantic Avenue, and perhaps you'd be willing to send them maybe a little map showing the entryway?
Absolutely.
And,
You mean Asbury Avenue, right?
That's, thank you. And I think that you're just being candid in explaining that while you can suggest, you can't always enforce.
Mr. B?
Yes.
Is it possible that we set up the ingress and egress, so if you did come from the 33 JV side, you're not going to be able to track the trail?
We could certainly address the
That's all I'm
geometry.
saying to you, Mr. Grohl.
I'm definitely,
I mean, my concern is even on the exiting,
It's tough.
I have to say, there's no way a truck is gonna make a left and go all the way out to Asbury Avenue, loop around, when they can make a right and be on 33, 34 in a hot second. Like, they're not gonna do
I
it.
would never, if I was a truck driver, I would be going to 33.
Yeah, you're not gonna go the other way, opposite
I would
33.
do it.
But then you're not at least crossing, like leaving there, it's one thing, but coming.
I'm not arguing with you, but I'm telling you, if I was driving, and I do it all the time, I do shady stuff when I'm driving. And I apologize. I do, I see no left-hand turn all the time, but, I gotta be somewhere. If I'm not gonna run over a kid, I'm making that right. Like, it's just.
We're having a lot of candor.
In furtherance of research in general traffic patterns that assist you in assessing the testimony that you're hearing, not because you wish to break the law yourself, but you're trying to understand.
And I think part of it is we should probably listen to the traffic engineer too.
Yeah.
But I think you're also hearing from the applicant that if there's an engineering solution that makes it more likely in terms of decanting of the driveway, as the board member was suggesting, the applicant is more than happy to do that. Okay. Any other questions of this witness?
I have a few questions.
Sure.
Thanks for coming, Mr. Marola. The property right now, I know you were discussing it, that's open for business now, these other...
We're operating, but very lightly, but yes.
Now, over there right now, did I hear you say you're kind of just bringing in large volume and breaking it up and then shipping it back out?
No, in a sense, yes.
Yeah, and so, but you want to increase that with the new building, but also include manufacturing. You talked about Mosaic. So you're going to be bringing in equipment and all that. It's not just going to be a simple in and out operation.
No, that's part of one of the things we want to add is get that up and running properly.
No, okay. The other thing I want to say, the trucks are very sensitive around here right now. We've had the mayor of Farmingdale in front of our body complaining about tractor trailers in Farmingdale. So, you know, we're always looking for the best way. So. And that's all I had. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions, Mr. Morrell? Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. I would ask our planner, John McDonough, unless you want traffic next.
They want to go with traffic.
Okay. Mr. Seckler?
Yeah, that's fine.
Just stay on the same subject?
Yeah, we'll just knock it all out. It's all getting to it one way or another.
Oh, yeah, I know exactly what
Okay, do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to provide this board is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Please state and spell your name for the record.
My name is Matthew Seckler, that's Seckeler. I'm with Stonefield Engineering Design. Address is 92 Park Avenue in Rutherford, New Jersey.
Okay, Mr. Seckler, can you tell the board about your training experience and qualifications?
Sure, I have a Bachelor of Science in Civil Engineering from Union College in Schenectady, New York, Master's in City Regional Planning from Rutgers University, a licensed professional engineer in the state, also recognized professional traffic operations engineer by the Institute of Transportation Engineers, been accepted before, I believe, this board and at least 150 other boards as a traffic engineer in the state.
We'll accept your credentials.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Seckler, have you had a chance to examine the application, study the site, and come to conclusions concerning the traffic impact of these operations?
Yes, I have, and a lot of that information is included within the traffic impact study that was prepared and submitted to this board, dated May 31st, 2023. Within this report includes data that we collected, which includes traffic counts along the adjacent roadways, reviews of site distance, parking requirements, and on-site circulation design. Obviously, I'd be happy to go into all those details, but just briefly, the counts were performed in April of 2023, your typical morning and evening rush hour periods, get an understanding of what impacts development like this would have on the adjoining roadway network. Now, I know that this board has heard a lot of discussions about how this site will operate from the operator, so I'm not going to reiterate what was previously testified to, but you heard numbers that even in their high-end expectations, that everything goes well and they may even close a different location, they still had sufficient parking for the number of employees, which I think even the high number was 125 to 150, so that would fit within the site itself. You've heard discussions from the site engineer related to the parking, drive aisles, the circulation patterns, the loading areas that are proposed, all of which, and even the loading amount, meets what is the expectation, the highest level of expectation of use for this site. And again, that was, you heard regarding the number of loading days, we have to have an efficient operations, separate receiving and shipping locations within the site itself, all of which again have been designed appropriately. I think really, hearing from the board and kind of the chase, is a lot of discussion is truck and truck routes. And again, I think this board discussion is exactly what I've had in my mind or with the project team to this point, is the fact, one, it's usually easier to restrict movements leaving a site than coming in, because a truck who is unaware wouldn't be able to know ahead of time necessarily what route they should be routing into the site. My one concern is if you do physically restrict the left-in movement at the truck driveway, is what happens when a truck does approach from that direction. It doesn't help if they can't physically get in, because really I think their only choice would then be, if they're smart enough, going all the way down Asbury Avenue again, going around the circle, knowing, and then coming all the way back, or it could be K-turning in some random private vacant area, which I think would cause more harm than good. I do think leaving the site, you have a better opportunity to physically restrict movements because the truck would just be forced to go a certain direction. Now, there's a little bit of balancing act here, and I know we have the planner going next, so the site engineer already went. Our driveway, as shown in the plan, I believe, and again, the planner and engineer will speak definitively, meets the buffer requirements that we have, because we don't have unlimited frontage along Tinton Falls Road, where we have a somewhat limited area that we're trying to respect the residential buffers on either side. If we were to put some sort of kind of pork chop island or channelization, it may require the driveway actually to get a little bit wider. So I think while there is probably an engineering solution, I think there may be some give and take on whether some of the, a couple feet of potentially the driveway getting wider, 5 feet, 10 feet getting wider, is that balance enough to create a physical restriction for the trucks to force them to make the left out? Besides that, again, this is a use that is permitted in the zone. So again, this type of use, is something that was anticipated, that there may be truck traffic from a development like this. I think the applicant is more than willing to work with the board and the board's professionals in, what type of geometric tweaks can we make to make it as less impactful to the adjoining area and the adjacent roadway network. But again, I think what you heard in terms of level of traffic, the 20 to 30 trucks a day, again, it's not going to be spread over 24 hours because they're really only open for 12. But again, even that level of traffic over a 12-hour period, even on their highest days at 20 to 30, which was their highest expectation, is a couple trucks an hour, whether it's coming in or out. So again, I don't think it's going to be completely changing the neighborhood. It can make the movements necessary to get back to 33 or 34 at the circle if they take Asbury Avenue. But again, I do agree with the board and the applicant in trying to work together and finding what will be the least impactful truck route from this site, which again, we think is left down Tinton Falls, left down Asbury, go to the circle, because from there you can go anywhere. You can go north, south, east, west from that location. So again, in conclusion, again, our traffic study overall determined that there would be no significant increase in delays on the adjacent roadway network based on this permitted use being developed here. The number of loading spaces, parking spaces, we believe fit not only the zoning ordinance, but also the expected operations of the site, and the site has been designed efficiently and effectively.
Thank you. I open it to questions of the professionals of the board.
I have nothing.
May I call my next witness? Not yet. Oh, they're still looking around.
Dude, this is just a real problem.
Yeah, listen, you just understand where we're coming from as far as safety-wise for residents and through traffic, okay? We don't need our council getting a phone call every 2 days from the Farmingdale mayor because you guys live on that road or complaining about the tractor trailers coming up to 33, making a left into the property and causing a potential, situation there, because you don't really have
a way around,
a swing.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
You agree with that? So maybe with your engineer, you could maybe get this a little wider.
Right.
If this was good, to make it easier, because if you are going to force everybody on the way out to go left,
right,
with signage, that doesn't mean you're going to go left.
Right.
Okay. That is what it is. Okay. We're not going to. You can't sit here. They're going to put a cop there 24/7. Okay. But the other side is, that road has just got has a bunch of farms on it, a bunch of little residential houses, and that's our only concern is safety for people on the road.
And again, that left in Asbury, we think.
That's a great idea.
It goes the least amount of houses. Least amount of houses. Again, you guys picked up on it immediately.
That's great.
Least amount of houses are impacted by that movement. And again, I would just ask that if the driveway does need to become a little wider in order to geometrically fit some sort of angling piece, some sort of swing, again, I don't know if relief is going to be needed related to making that driveway a little bit wider.
And in that regard, the applicant is willing to work with the professionals of the board do anything we can to try to make it as efficient and safe as possible. I think what our traffic engineer is saying, I know he is that by widening driveway to accommodate that, you may then impact on your buffer, which would require variance relief. And if it is,
I'm not understanding that. The buffer relief is over by Ruckel.
Yep.
The access is over on Tinton Falls. Like, they're not even near each other. I don't know what you're talking about.
They're not saying that there is or there isn't. They're just saying with a remote possibility that some sort of variance or design waiver results from the redesign.
I'm not understanding.
Yeah, so we understand.
Yeah, I don't want to.
We understand.
Yeah, I don't want to decide on the fly, basically. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Any other questions? Okay, before you bring your next witness, we just need to take a quick 5-minute break.
Absolutely. Thank you.
The board will now take a 5-minute recess.
You got it, okay.
Right here.
You can't hear.
I think we lost the attorney.
Yeah. That's where it's supposed to be. Yeah.
Sorry.
Oh, yeah, no, that's fine.
I need a lawyer.
Listen, you know what?
He's here.
But it has to be.
You don't hear that often.
Waiting to make an entrance.
Yeah, no, you don't.
Sorry for the delay, members.
Oh, no worries.
Okay. John McDonough is...
Yeah, let me just swear you in first, Mr. McDonough. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give this board is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Please state and spell your name for the record.
Sure. Hi there, everyone. My name is John McDonough. That's spelled MC, capital DONOUGH, and I'm the project planner.
Okay. Mr. McDonough, can you tell the board about your qualifications, experience, and licensure?
Sure. My license in professional planning is current and in good standing. I have the good fortune of getting to testify throughout the state on a nightly basis, so you get to see the full cross-section. I'm also AICP, nationally certified, that's current and in good standing. I testify before boards and courts.
We'll accept your credentials.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. McDonough, you've had a chance to review the application.
Yes, I have.
You've heard the earlier testimony and spoken with the applicant, correct?
Yes, I have.
Can you address the planning aspects and the request for variances in this matter?
Sure. It's a very straightforward application from a planning standpoint. You have a good body of evidence, so I'll be relatively brief. This is a case where we have an established business with a commitment to the community, and we're looking to enhance it. The essence of the application, as you've heard, are operational efficiencies. We're going to look at this application as a whole and apply what we call the flexible C-balancing test in terms of the relief the applicant is seeking. We've landed at a point where the relief that the applicant is seeking is relatively modest here. That triangular pinch point, I'll call it, over by Ruckel, where we don't have the existing 50-foot width, would totally fall under the realm of hardship, but I think the board can also move favorably, again, on the application as a whole, under the flexible C-balancing test, where we look at the benefits of the application, substantially outweighing any of the detriments that would be associated with the relief the applicant is seeking. In terms of project positives, the project as a whole, as you've heard through good operational testimony and site testimony before me, will improve operational efficiencies on the site and enable this permitted use to serve its public purpose better than it does now. It's an established growing business and it needs to grow. It is growing within the confines, substantially within the confines of your ordinance from a bulk standpoint. I have in my notes the lot size, the lot dimensions, the lot coverage, the building height, the building setbacks, and the parking all comply. So the list of conformance here is long. The list of the relief is relatively short, again related to that buffer. I think we've solved the issue with the buffer composition and the year-round. With all of those circles you've seen that the applicant has drawn around that residential uses to protect them year-round as well.
You do have a good body of evidence with respect to the lower design exceptions. They're listed very well in your planner's report on a point-by-point basis, and engineering as well. Our engineer has addressed every one of them, and I think my job is not to go back and rehash them, but rather bring you back to the statute. Again, the one variance relief that the applicant is seeking is justified under that flexible C balancing test, benefits outweighing detriments. I think the board can find that with advanced purpose A, the promotion of the general welfare, purpose M, the planning goal for efficient use of land, purpose G for a variety of uses in appropriate locations, and maybe purpose I to a certain extent in the interest of positive aesthetics, keeping that building back from the residential uses and substantial greenery in between, I think preserves a positive aesthetic in the neighborhood as well. Based on all of the testimony, no relief here will cause impacts of a substantially adverse nature, either to the neighborhood or to the zone plan. So I think that flexible C test is met, and you've also got the C1 hardship with respect to that relief. The lower level design exceptions all hit that lesser standard of reasonableness and appropriateness and practicability, meaning that strict or literal enforcement of the ordinance would serve no practical purpose here. All of the relief that the applicant is seeking from a design standpoint work well to the fact that the overall site plan will flow, function, and operate safely and efficiently. Taking that load off of Ruckel and shifting it over to the Tinton Falls side, we think is clearly a better zoning alternative that will improve the overall action or interface of this site with the surrounding neighborhood. All said, I'll fall back on all of the testimony that's on the record now, bring it back to the statute and say the statutory criteria for all of the relief are met. And with that, I think approval is warranted.
Thank you. Any questions of the professionals or board?
Anybody have any questions?
The only question I have is, would the applicant be willing to work with our office on the architecture of this building to ensure that it comes closer to compliance with our vision for these types of buildings?
The answer is yes, and we're going to have architectural testimony in a moment.
I don't necessarily know if that's necessary. I think if as long as you're willing to commit that they'll work with our office, the board has historically put that in my lap. So if they're good with that, I think the board probably would agree. As long as you're willing to work with my office, yes. I think that's something that we can.
I looked at my
plan. Let's just be more specific. It's not merely working with Jen's office. It would be redesigning subject to the review and approval of Jen's office.
Yes.
Okay.
Anybody have any questions?
Okay. Thank you. Hearing that, does the board or do the professionals want to hear from our architectural expert? So at least Jen should.
No, I mean, yeah, I was going to say, if they're willing to do their due diligence with Jen, that's, I mean, unless it's
it was a magnificent witness.
Yeah. You guys could deal with her. You guys got one with that.
I'm sure we will work well together.
I'm putting that in the resolution.
Did you have any other witnesses?
That is it, unless the board has more questions of anybody that we've called previously.
Well, with that being said, I'm going to open it up to the public.
For questions and comments.
For questions and comments. And I see all the public that insisted that we be back in person is here again, as they always seem to be. And with that said, I'm going to close the public portion. Have a summary.
Well, I think you've heard testimony that shows that the application is warrants being granted. You've heard from the owner about his operations. Most of the application conforms to the requirements of the zoning. Few minor variances requested. Our planners explained why that's warranted. This business has a long history of improving the properties it's in and being good neighbors. They'll do the same in Howell, and we hope that you'll welcome them in the Loudon district. Thank you.
Thank you. No other comments? Everybody good? Before I take a motion, I mean, this is the type of business we want.
it's a clean business, it's a good spot, in my opinion. Yeah.
I'm just happy to see him doing that in our town. I mean,
Yeah, that's right.
we need more of that. We really do.
Yeah, I mean,
So with that being said, Paul, I have a motion to approve this application.
Beautiful.
Second.
Fred.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call.
Please.
Mr. Cristiano?
Yes.
Mr. Greenfield?
Yes.
Mr. Husser?
Yes.
Mr. Leggio?
Yes.
Mr. Seaman?
Yes.
Councilman Gager?
Yes.
Mr. Mercer?
Yes.
Ms. Pike? Yes. And Chairman Bavai.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Welcome to the neighborhood.
Thank you very much.
Master plan update.
So we had a master plan subcommittee meeting last week where the committee went over a draft re-exam that's going to be coming to you. There were minimal recommendations for tweaks here and there, which we've made. That document's going back out to the subcommittee tomorrow. As long as they're okay with what I said, which was very minimal, it's going to come before you, and we should be able to have a hearing on it in October.
Great. Do we have any reason to go into executive?
No, Mr. Chairman.
With that being said, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Good night.
Thank you.